So in the year 2016, we have had 4 video game movies come out. And so far, they have been passable, generic, and Jesus, get that out of my face! So where does Assassin's Creed fall into this? Well, like every other video game film, when it was announced, we were all scared of what to expect. But honestly, it got some pretty good press behind it. The first bit was the fact that it wasn't going to be a straight adaptation, but rather another story in the world of the video games. Another was the fact that Ubisoft opened up a dedicated film studio themselves and was heading up the film, rather than just giving it off to a separate studio. So we knew that the people who were actually in charge of the games were also working on the film itself. So do they actually help this movie? Sorta? I'm gonna let you know, I really like the Assassin's Creed series. After playing the first game, I was hooked. I will admit that even though the game's quality goes downhill, I still played them waiting for the story to pick up. While I might do a retrospective on the series later on, I'll leave it at the story's been kind of at a standstill since Assassin's Creed 3. But we're not here talking about the games, we're here talking about the movie. And let's talk about what the movie does right. The fact that this doesn't have any characters from the games works well because we can introduce new characters so that people new to the franchise can relate to them. Also, the way they adapted the animus for on-screen is done really, really well. I mean, would you want to see somebody asleep for most of the movie? Of course not. The fact that they chose to hook him up to this really awesome machine and create this whole virtual reality around him just makes the past scenes seem awesome. It beats watching a guy falling asleep, and I have to say, visually, they really, really nailed this movie. The costuming, the set design, a lot of it shows their dedication to bringing the franchise to the big screen. The action is visceral and it has great visual aesthetic to both the past and the present parts of the film. But sadly, that's where most of my praises end for the movie. See, like almost every video game film, the major area that this movie falls flat in is the script and the story. Remember when I said it wasn't a straight adaptation of the first game? Yeah, only superficially. The story we're given is exactly the same, just with different characters. Guy gets kidnapped, is put in the Animus, is pulled out for a bit, put back in to find the artifact, end of movie. The story is very bland because, like the game, the present section can't continue unless the past section ends. But unlike the game, a majority of the story takes place in the present, and that's the biggest issue with the film. Once we get to Abstergo, we're at a standstill, and nothing that they do is interesting. They try to force these captured assassins on us, and they're all bland and boring and useless to the overall narrative. None of our characters really go anywhere or do anything special, and sadly that goes for the past sections as well. No one is a character. The parts of the past force you into random parts of their life, so it feels like we're missing motivation, character, a purpose. Even though they are the best parts of the film, the movie just uses it to give a quick action scene for the movie and feels forced, especially with how little time we're given in the film. The dialogue is also sloppy and does not sound right coming from our characters. The cast does their best and honestly gives pretty good performances despite the sloppy pacing and the script. And even if it wanted to take all of its story beats from the first game, there are ways to fix that pacing issue for the big screen. If the film introduced the present section and gave us a motivation to go back into the past, a majority of the movie could have focused on building up this story from the past perspective, only to bring it back at the end of the film, which would have worked really well. Overall, while it does hit the better parts of the franchise, it fails on being an actual good movie. Is it the worst video game movie ever? God, no! Is it the best? Far from it. I would still say that it would be Ratchet & Clank. It isn't a film you should go out of your way to see, but if you're desperate for a film to watch one night, it could be worth a rental. This gets a 4 out of 10.